So we are losing our free speech. If we lose and if we are censored, which is what is happening, then we lose all our freedom, because free speech is the mother of all freedom.
By all accounts, Professor and author Salim Mansur has all the hallmarks of a star candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. Dr. Mansur is an intellectual and has written extensively on a variety of topics, but alas, the Andrew Scheer Conservatives have disallowed the candidacy of Salim Mansur, meaning that Professor Mansur will not, contrary to expectations, be representing the party in a London, Ontario riding. Apparently, Mr. Scheer is antsy about Dr. Mansur's public criticism pertaining to radical Islam, and inexplicably, for having the temerity to call out the jihadis, this somehow makes Dr. Mansur the wrong kind of Muslim? Absolutely incredible. Joining me now from London is Salim Mansur, who only found out the other day that he is candidate non grata as far as Team Scheer is concerned, just for having the audacity to speak openly and honestly about radical Islam. Great to have you with us, Salim.
Thank you, David. Thank you for calling me.
Always a pleasure. So, as I alluded to in my intro, sir, it would appear that when it comes to Mr. Scheer, even when a Muslim such as yourself calls out the likes of the Muslim Brotherhood, this is an act of Islamophobia? How can this be, Salim?
Well, David, let whoever talk about Islamophobia first define what it is supposed to mean. And this is a whole different topic. But what has happened is that the leadership and the people around the leadership informed me by an email that they have disallowed my candidacy in London North Centre, and that they provided in that email no reason. There was no indication of why they were doing this.
So if there is no indication, Salim, what do you think is the unspoken strategy of the Conservatives in determining that they don't want you to be part of the team?
Well, David, that is the most interesting question, not only about the Conservative Party at the present time. I think that is a question that is a question for the whole country. I am a long-standing member of the Conservative Party, more than 30 years now. And the people in the Conservative Party right across the country, they know me, they have read me, and I think I have a lot of support and a lot of well-wishers. But why the leadership has done this, they have provided no reason. And I think the fact that they did not state why they are disallowing me is they don't want a paper trail of the reason for which they have disallowed me. I cannot speculate. It is up to them to come out and indicate to the public in London North Centre why the Conservative members of London North Centre who have been denied their right to choose their candidate in a fair, democratic contest. I did not want, or nor did I sought, any preferential treatment. I filed my nomination paper more than 9 months ago, last summer. I went through all the process. I was interviewed by the selection committee of the London North Centre EDA. and I think they reported my application favorably. And I never heard anything from Ottawa all of these 9 months until I got this email telling me that they have disallowed my candidacy.
And Salim, I can tell you, I've reached out to the Conservative Party to ask them for specific details. I've been met again with radio silence. But speaking of a paper trail, my personal view, Salim, and I might be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. I think Andrew Scheer is terrified that people in his enemies, those in the media party that are not conservative, will cherry pick certain comments, certain phrases from your columns, take them out of context, and say, look at this man, look at this anti-Muslim rhetoric that he writes, which of course is ludicrous, given that you yourself are Muslim, of course. And that's what I think is behind this, Salim. I just think that Andrew Scheer is so desperate to get the approval of those that, well, they don't like him now and they never like him, that he'll throw you under the bus if that's, a means in achieving this. What do you think?
David, I'll speak to you now about the situation in the larger term. The specific question that you asked me, why Andrew Scheer and his people disallowed me, is up to speculation. So I will leave it to the people to come to their own conclusion, because my views, my position is in the public. I was not writing as a conservative. I was writing in my capacity as a professor and a public intellectual, yes, and a nationally syndicated columnist for the Sun media for 15 years.
Yes.
As a Canadian who happens to be a Muslim, and all of my writing is in the public, and the public can, and that's what you're doing, David. You are talking to me now as Salim Mansur. And so now my answer to your question is, in the larger sense, is that since 9/11, the Western world is faced with a totalitarian movement that is global and that is engaged in violence. This violence was brought to North America on 9/11. But this violence and this totalitarian ideology has been plaguing the Muslim world for almost the entire 20th century. Yeah. And now it has gone global. The whole irony is that our mainstream political parties have engaged in appeasing this global totalitarian movement that stands in complete opposition to the values that people like you and I cherish, defend. And in my case, I have been defending and talking about before 9/11.
Yes. And
the issue is that we as Canadians are faced, that we need to talk and understand about this elephant in the room, in our room, which affects everything. It affects our way of life. It affects our liberal democracy. It affects our economy. And most fundamentally, it affects our security. We cannot talk about immigration, for instance, without taking into account the elephant in the room, that is Islamism and Islamists.
100%.
So I have spoken about it, but I'm a very small person. I'm just alone. and my voice is just limited to the people who have read me.
Well, Salim,
The Conservative Party knew that.
and speaking of the
When I
Conservative,
applied,
okay,
they saw all of my resume.
yeah.
They had the entire list of my publication, of my books, of the awards I have won. So it was not that I was an unknown quantity, but they sat on my application for more than 9 months,
Yeah.
did not communicate with me, did not discuss the issue, and then decided to disallow me.
Well, Salim, speaking of the Conservatives and irony or perverse irony, what I find staggering is the fact that I go back to 2017 and Andrew Scheer raised a question in the House of Commons, a very fair, a very important question about what is Canada going to be doing about Canadians who were fighting for ISIS overseas returning to Canada. And you may remember this, Justin Trudeau got out and outrageously smeared Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives as being Islamophobes simply for asking this perfectly valid question. And now it would seem to me that Mr. Scheer has sampled the Kool-Aid. He's worried about being branded an Islamophobe, based on the writings of someone of your stature, again, being twisted and taken out of context. I just find it stunning because that was an unfair smear to Mr. Scheer. It was outrageous. It was ludicrous. And yet, from what I read if I'm reading the tea leaves right, the Conservative Party is doing to you what Justin Trudeau and the Liberals did to Mr. Scheer 2 years ago. It's incredible, Salim.
Yes, it is incredible because what has happened, David, the Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau, and the parties on the left, the NDP, the Green, and all the people who have soaked up the ideology of the left, of the globalism that is in the academia and in the media, they have basically surrendered to the idea and narrative of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they are now pushing the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, Motion 103, Islamophobia, and everything else. And
Salim,
the Muslim Brotherhood,
we just lost your picture there.
Global phenomena was and is to silence any discussion of Islamism by branding anyone who discusses what is happening as a bigot, hence Islamophobia.
Oh, and Salim, in addition to everything you just said,
all non-Muslims, especially the political elite, the academic elite, and the media elite in the Western world has surrendered and fearful that they will be called bigots. That's what has happened. So we are losing our free speech. If we lose and if we are censored, which is what is happening, then we lose all our freedom, because free speech is the mother of all freedom.
Well, I would suggest that Mr. Scheer isn't that big on free speech. Salim, just last week I was in Ottawa to cover the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. This is the horse and pony show in which they're going to bring back Section 13 into the Canadian Human Rights Act. This is, of course, the pro-censorship, anti-free speech provision, something that in 2013 the Stephen Harper Conservatives rightfully eradicated. And yet, what do we have? We have Conservatives on that committee voting for it to be brought back. And I mean, to me, the world is upside down because there's still dozens of Conservatives as part of Team Scheer that were there when it was Mr. Harper as Prime Minister. So in addition to the likes of M103, here we have Section 13 coming back. So I think that Mr. Scheer isn't all that big on freedom of speech. And if you talk about an item that resonates with a conservative base, certainly it's freedom of speech. So why is he going down this route, Salim?
David, I was in the thick of the battle to repeal Section 13.
Yeah.
I have a whole chapter in my book, Delectable Law, The Liberal Repudiation of Multiculturalism, on Section 13, of what Stein and Levan and others were engaged in, and in some ways I was engaged in, and repeal, or at least a part. Here is the issue. Once you begin to appease the crocodile, you end up being eaten by the crocodile.
Yeah. You know, well said.
There is no end to appeasement.
And you know, I think there's an example to back up your analogy, Salim. If you are not the so-called right kind of Muslim for the Conservative Party in the eyes of the hierarchy in Ottawa, then let's look who Andrew Scheer has been hobnobbing with recently. He was he had a photo op with Omar Subadar. This is that imam who's basically written the book on the proper ways in which to discipline and use physical force against your wife. Why in blue hell would Andrew Scheer want to hang with somebody like that, and yet a scholar like you, who calls it like you see it, and it's the truth, is, like I said earlier, persona non grata? Again, I think this is an act of cowardice, and I think it's dangerous, quite frankly.
David, let us give, from my part, let me give you the best interpretation, the most charitable interpretation, the most favorable interpretation of what you have defined. I think our conservative leaders is uninformed. Yeah. They don't know the subject. They don't know the history. They don't know the culture. And they have come to believe, which is a legacy or the consequence of multiculturalism, that you go to the ethnic community to get votes, and you go to the Sikh Gurdwara, the Hindu temple, and of course the Muslim mosque to get vote. This is the legacy of multiculturalism. Why do politicians in a secular liberal democracy head to the mosque to go and get vote?
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the mosque to get vote, then you are already compromised to basically hold the hands of the people who control the mosque. 95% of the mosques in Canada, in North America, are funded and run by offshore money coming from the Middle East. The people in the mosque are the agents and the loyalists to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. I cannot go to the mosque in London.
Wow.
The reason I cannot go, because the mosque has given fatwa and have declared me a heretic and an apostate. I went to the mosque in Jerusalem. I prayed in Jerusalem. But I cannot go to the mosque in London. The greatest and the freest and the most liberal capital in the world for people of all religion is the capital of Israel.
You know,
our politician, as I said, once you begin appeasing then there is no end to it. It is a simple geometrical logic. Once your premise, whatever is your premise in logic, is flawed, then the result will be flawed. It cannot be corrected.
You know, and one of the reasons why I say it's a dangerous road to travel down, Salim, is that, you know, you mentioned Israel and the freedom there, yet we have in many Western cities, including Toronto, the annual Al-Quds Day protest. And at the last one, more than a week ago, I interviewed a Muslim man. He said he was a U of T graduate in the sciences, and he was hopeful and actually expecting that one day Sharia law will replace Canadian law. And it's not Sharia law light. He was very gleeful that this would mean the execution of gay people in Canada. This is somebody in Toronto in 2019 saying this. It is absolutely astonishing. But Salim, we're running long on time. One last exit question. Now that the Conservative Party has cut ties with you, what is the future for Professor Mansur? Are you considering maybe running as an independent or as a member of the People's Party of Canada, or are you done with politics now?
No, one cannot be done with politics no more than one can be done with gravity. But where and what I'm going to do in terms of the 2019 election, we will make a decision. I will make a decision with my team. But here, David, if you have a minute, this is what I will say for now. My rights as a Canadian citizen and a member of the Conservative Party was taken away without any reason to contest a nomination contest. And the democratic rights of the Conservative members of London Non-Centre was taken away, and they were denied the right to choose their candidate to represent them in the 2019 election. We will have to remedy that.
Well, you know, Professor Mansur, I've stated what I believe and what I think is the truth. And all I can say as we wrap this up is that I think it's cowardly on the behalf of the Conservative Party. It's shameful. And ultimately, it is self-defeating. I think we see a very weak, timid leader stabbing himself, and it's going to be a death of 1,000 cuts, self-inflicted, I may add, and in terms of taking an election that should be a sure thing for regime change, given all the scandals with the Liberal Party, and actually making it a horse race or giving another mandate to the Justin Trudeau Liberals. It's a tragedy, I think, we're watching unfold, and I'm so sorry that a star candidate like you is given the bum's rush. But Andrew Scheer, he has plenty of time for the likes of Omar Subadar and his odious rhetoric. So, Salim, I want to thank you again for joining me here, and good luck in the future, sir.
Thank you, David, for having me.
Thank you so much. Hey, folks, if you like what you just saw, please like and subscribe and never miss another Rebel Update.